Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're actually going to be using the extreme parallel battery bank that I created a few videos ago. I thought today would be the perfect day to use it because the last couple days it has been really overcast and raining. And let me show you what my 24 volt system is sitting at right now. Okay, as you can see, it is 1:52 in the afternoon and we are only getting around 40 watts from our panels. Right now 36 watts and we're using 150 watts, and that is pretty much practically my minimum because what I power is my internet, I power a light upstairs, I also power my deep freezer. So as you can see on the left hand side, I could run this load for about 14 more hours before my batteries are completely depleted. But I believe if I set up my, my 12 volt parallel bank, I can plug in a 24 volt charger and start charging up that battery at like 10 amps. So that way it kind of negates any of the uses that I have right now. So that way I could probably do this until tonight or the next day. And then I think it's going to be sunny tomorrow, so I can actually get my 24 volt system charged back up with my solar panels. And then I can reverse the process and start charging this 12 volt bank back up. So that's the perfect scenario right there. But as you can see, I don't have anything set up, so I need to wire everything back up. And maybe then we need to find an inverter, which is going to be the proper size to be able to do what I want. So let's get started. All right, this is where I want to set up my little 12 volt parallel bank. It's right next to my 24 volt system. So I figure I just line up the batteries right here, have all the wires going down these little vents on the second shelf, and just have my fuse block sitting right here. And then that way I can maybe have like a 500 watt inverter or a 1500 watt inverter plugged in and start powering up that, that 24 volt charger in order to charge up my 24 volt system. But the first thing that I want to do is I want to test all the voltages of all these batteries to make sure they're the exact same, because I don't want to accidentally have a battery in here that I depleted and I didn't know about, because all of the energy from all those other batteries would rush into that one battery. And I would hope that it would pop the fuses and everything would stop, but this is such a small device that it could arc and it could cause a lot of problems. So with this kind of setup, I need to be pretty careful and make sure that everything is set the way that I want when it comes to voltage. All right, 13.38, 13.34, 13.33, and 13.33. So all of the voltages in all four of these batteries, which I'm only going to use 3 of them, but as I get more, I'll probably go ahead and just put a battery in, connect it up, and as long as the voltage is the same, I should gain another 100 amp hours or so. So, but for now, I'm just gonna connect the 3, and then we'll decide what kind of inverter I want to use. All right, and when it comes to the wiring, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just connect all the negatives first. So the negative of this battery, this 50 amp battery, and this 275 amp battery, and then I will go across and connect all the positives. That should be a pretty safe way to do it. Okay, everything's all wired up to the fuse block. All right, and I'm also going to go ahead and just put these little caps on some of the batteries. That way, if anything falls through here for any reason at all, it's not going to connect. And I'll probably put a little bit of tape on here. That way that's not exposed. Let's go ahead and take the voltage of the fuse block now. And make sure everything is in order. It should be right around 13.3 something. Yep, 13.34. So we are right on the mark. Now the next thing I need to do is connect an inverter to this. Now I'm not going to worry about putting a monitor on there for right now, because in the SunFun Kits battery, it does have Bluetooth capability and it has a state of charge indicator and all of that. And since I know that these batteries will deplete evenly relative to their size, I will know that if this battery says that it's right around 50%, that means that the entire bank is roughly around 50%. Now, I'm not going to be able to say, okay, each battery is exactly 50.5% depleted, but I will know that the whole bank by itself is 50% depleted. Roughly give or take even a couple of percentages. So if it's at 50%, I'll know that this bank is probably roughly between 45 and 55, and that's all I really care about. All right, now that I got everything all wired up, the next decision I need to make is which inverter to use. Now, I have an option. I have several options. They range from 500 watts to 5,000 watt inverters. Now, 5,000 watt inverter, that is just pure overkill. There is no reason for me to do that. And I think the standby consumption would be more than I want. I also have a 2,000 watt inverter charger, but again, I believe the standby consumption is pretty big. I have a 1,500 watt inverter, and it's the alpha inverter. It's the 1,500 watt pure sine wave. But I think something went wrong with it because I can only get about 96 to 100 volts out of it from the AC side. And I don't want to use that because I feel like it would use more amperage in order to get the power that I need from my charger. And also, I think it might potentially damage the equipment. So in a different video, I need to open this up and see if there's something I can do about that. So that leaves it down to two inverters. It's either this 1,100 watt modified sine wave inverter or this 500 watt pure sine wave inverter. So I'm going to try the 500 watt one first to see if it will charge my 24 volt system with 10 amps. Because 10 amps at 24 volts, I mean, that should only be about 200, well, let's just say 250 to 260 watts. And that 500 watt inverter should be able to do it. So let's go ahead and hook it up and see what happens. And what's nice is, hooking this thing up is going to be super easy. Just got to unplug it. Let's go ahead and put this here. Run the wire up through here. Plug it in, and then clamp right onto the fuse block. We'll probably get a small spark. There we go. It's such a small inverter, I didn't really worry about the spark too much. And that's it. It's all powered, ready to go. So you can see it's on. Let's go ahead and turn it on. And now it's ready. So let's go ahead and grab our charger and see what happens. Sorry about that. The battery on my camera died. So let's get this started again. All right, where I believe we left off at is that at 10 amps at 24 volts, my inverter shut off. So we went ahead and switched it to 5 amps at 24 volts. And we'll go ahead and turn the inverter back on. Battery charger turns on. All right, and it looks like we're charging at 5 amps. I mean, 5 amps is only 120 watts. That's That's not going to cut it. Okay, so what I think I'm going to go ahead and do, since this 500 watt inverter for some reason can't power the 10 amps that I want at 24 volts, I'm going to go ahead and wire up this 1100 watt modified sine wave inverter. Now, I'm not really sure about if there's going to be more of an efficiency loss. There might be some because it's modified rather than pure sine wave. Since we're using a battery charger, I don't think it being a modified sine wave inverter is going to make any difference when it comes to the quality of electricity that my 24 volt system is receiving. So let's go ahead and wire it up. Okay, everything's all tightened up. Let's go ahead and turn on the inverter. And then press the power button. All right, everything looks pretty happy. All right, let's go ahead and switch our battery charger back to 10 amps at 24 volts. And plug in. And then we'll go ahead and plug in the charger. All right, looks like it's ramping up. We got 9.3 amps. $10 shows 10 amps right there. So our charger says that it is charging at 10 amps. It's charging 10 amps at 26.5 volts. Now, it looks like everything's working. I don't hear any weird hums coming from the charger. I don't see like any anything at all having an issue. I think using this modified sine wave inverter is no problem at all. Please leave it in the comments if you know differently. Okay, well, let's go ahead and test to see how much loss we're actually getting through this horrible conversions. Okay, so the first measurement we're going to take is we're going to take the amperage and the voltage of what is going in to our 24 volt system. The charger says that it should be 26.5 volts at 8.2 amps, but let's go ahead and double check that. Okay, our voltage at the studs is 26.23. So 26.23 times, and then we'll check the amperage. Go ahead and zero it out. Oh, 0. And the amperage is, okay, we'll say 6.94. So if you multiply the voltage times the amperage, you get 182 watts. So there is 182 watts going into our system right now. Okay, the next thing I want to look at is what our kilowatt meter says. Our kilowatt meter says it looks like right at 200 watts. So there is 200 watts coming out of the inverter. And then last but not least, we're going to go ahead and measure the voltage of our fuse block, and we're going to multiply it by the amperage going through this wire to get to our inverter. Okay, so the voltage of our fuse block is 13.07. Okay, if we take 13.07 and multiply it by the amperage, and the amperage is okay, it looks like the amperage is 19.41. So 13.07 times 19.41 equals 253 watts. Okay, so if I'm correct on this, it looks like there's 253 watts coming out of our battery bank into our 12 volt modified sine wave inverter. From there, it's being converted from DC electricity to AC electricity, and the loss of that means that we're only getting 200 watts coming out of the AC side of this 12 volt inverter. Now, and then it's going into this 24 volt charger, which again, there is another loss. And what we got coming out of the 24 volt charger right into our system is 182 watts. So we're going from 253 watts down to 182 watts. So 253 minus 182 equals 71 watts. 71 watts of loss is what we're getting through this conversion. And if you take 71 and divide it by 253, that is a 28% loss because of all the conversions. And that's pretty substantial. If, okay, this is a 425 amp battery bank. So if you take 28% off the top of that, 425 times 0.28, you are losing 119 amps of electricity. That's an entire battery. I would need to add another 100 amp battery plus some, probably 150 amp battery, in order to actually get the real 425 amps out of this bank using this kind of system. So there are some numbers for you. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and let this system run probably for the rest of the day, and I'll probably come down and turn it off right before I go to bed, because in all honesty, I could use the electricity. Let's go ahead and see what the numbers are on my 24 volt system now. You can see that I'm getting about 63 watts from the solar panels, and that's a 2600 watt array. So that can tell you how cloudy it is out there. It's cloudy, rainy, just garbage. But where you see it where it says DC power, I now have a negative number. I now have negative 76 watts. So on top of the 60 watts I'm getting from my solar, I'm getting an additional like 70, 75 watts from this charger. And all the stuff that was being powered before is still being powered. So this setup does kind of negate all the stuff that I have plugged in right now. So it is working the way that I prefer. I'm just not getting nearly the amount of amp hours that I actually physically have. All right, and I did design this system in the realization that it was going to be a slow burner. And what I mean by that is that I wired it. I'm using a 100 amp fuse block. I'm using very small inverters because I know how I'm going to use it. This is not going to be used for trying to power up large loads. I know that. I know exactly what it's going to be used for. So that's why I can get away with using the smaller gauge wire, the smaller inverter, the 100 amp fuse block. And that's what makes it really important when you are building your own system. if you're going to actually build your own system that you're going to have in a permanent solution, you do want to use the exact same battery. That way you have the exact same resistance, you have the exact same settings in your BMS. You definitely don't want to mix your sealed lead acid batteries and your lithium batteries or your lithium iron phosphate batteries with flooded batteries. You just want to use the exact same battery when it comes to building a bank with multiple batteries. It's also very important to know the total wattage of everything that you're going to want to be powering. In this instance, I know that I'm not going to increase it any more than 350 watts, and that would be the very maximum. But that's the thing. Make sure that you know exactly the maximum amount of wattage that could ever possibly go into your system. And you need to think about the future, because you might want to build a 12-volt system and use, I don't know, 4-gauge wire and a 1500 watt inverter. But then over time, you're like, well, I would like to be able to plug in more stuff. I'm going to go ahead and purchase a 3000 watt inverter. But if you don't increase the wire gauge or increase the fuses that you have, that's when you start running into problems. So know what you're going to power and build your system accordingly. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about how I got my numbers or how I calculated the losses of this entire scenario, please leave them in the comments. I hope you all have a good day and take care. Bye-bye.